We're seeing a lot of sleep issues, we're seeing a lot of mood issues, depressions, all those things. I was reading about how you can solve a lot of that naturally.
It's so hard to say. I lived in the same home, ate the same food, same parents, same faith, same everything, and I didn't get depression, anxiety. My brother takes his life.
Welcome to Affinity Peak Performance, empowering you to peak in health and energy to fully express what you were created to be.
Hey, welcome back to another podcast of Affinity Peak Performance. I'm Dr. Todd Smith. Good to see you again. I have to do a little disclaimer that things you hear on our podcast are meant for informational and educational purposes. And if you're having a health condition, you should seek advice from your professional certified healthcare provider. So I welcome with me tonight Dr. Clifton Brady. He came in all the way from out west to do this podcast, and excellent human being, an excellent doctor. I'm very lucky to have him tonight. He was originally born in Utah, but raised in Arizona, I believe. And then he also was a doc here in Tennessee. And now he's expanding to serve more people worldwide. So very lucky to have him in tonight, and look forward to catching up with him. He's funny, a couple of little things about him. He likes to read while he's walking or jogging, which is amazing to me. I love to read, but not while we're running. And also loves to read scriptures, and also read Waldo Emerson and Ralph Waldo, and is one of his jams as well. So he's married. He has 4 beautiful children. And anyways, enough of that. Dr. Brady, welcome.
Yeah,
thank you.
Thank you.
And I was really excited to, when you were telling me about some of the focuses that you've been working on the last few years. Not only are those subjects dear to my heart, but also I think the timing in the country is very important with regard to some of the work you're doing, if not all the work you're doing, with all the recent happenings the last few years with not just the COVID issue, but also mental health, especially. And you have some very powerful stories with regard to what I believe is part of your passion for the work you do. So I'd love for you to start us off with kind of telling us your backstory, and maybe if you feel comfortable including about your brother.
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Yeah.
By the way, I haven't tripped yet walking while I read. So.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's pretty good.
No, I get way more inspired when I'm walking and reading, and just love deep thoughts. So, and I've always appreciated that about you and our conversations. This is going to be fun. So yeah, my story. I grew up in, like you said, Arizona. But when it came to doing my career, I ended up working with my dad, home building. And so I've built several homes throughout my life, and even built personal homes. But I had a feeling I needed to get out. And so I did, but I didn't know what that meant. What was get out now mean? Sure. And it ended up going to Missouri, going to school, all that kind of stuff. And when I got time to graduate, I had 2 cars and a moving vehicle. I'm like, I only have 2 drivers. And so I called up my brother, Luke, and he said, you know what, I'll drop everything. I'm going to come out. I'll fly my own way, and I can't pay you. And he goes, that's fine. I'll take care of it. I think he even lost his job to come out. That's the kind of guy. Have you heard the song, You Know Who Your Friends Are, the country song? That was him. Committed. Like, he would drop anything and everything. And so he came, and we loaded up, came down, moved into our home. I think I got him Chick-fil-A. That's pretty much all I could afford, sure. As you can imagine, getting out of school. And 9 months later, he's gone. Wow. Took his life. And so I'm like, okay, which one's my brother? The one that it was, feeling just this evil inside feelings, overwhelmed, mad, angry at the world, or the guy who dropped everything and came out and moved to me.
And you had no inclination that...
We did.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I mean, he struggled. Okay. He struggled most of his life. He was angry and mad and frustrated. And then he was a sweet, wonderful, awesome... Like, his favorite thing was to take video or photography of animals. So he lived just a tormented life. And so that was part of my story as I bury that seed, and it starts to grow many years later. But while I was here, I can't remember if you know this or remember this or not, but I showed up to my practice, and there was a fire at my practice. And it was just smoke damage and stuff like that. But luckily, the insurance took long enough to where as I was calling up my patients and helping them with nutrient protocols and stuff, I was able to help a ton of people while I was waiting to get back in and do chiropractic.
Gotcha.
And I thought, this is fun. I really enjoy. My only overhead's my phone. Like this is cool. I don't have any staff or any overhead, and so it took a while for that to finally transition. But yeah, I've been helping people over the phone ever since. And so I did COVID about 13 years earlier. Like now it's popular to work from home, but I've been doing that ever since. So once I moved back to Utah, which I was never going to do, but God says you're going back. I'm like, okay, that's where we're going. And ran across a guy that was helping people, a doctor, with depression and anxiety and using his protocols, and the rest is history. I've helped over 5,000 people in 38 states. I have clients in Mexico, which is really hard to get product there, so not too many there, but England and Puerto Rico and Canada, so it's not quite worldwide, but people know people who are struggling, and that's
For sure.
that's a real thing.
So take me through a little bit about this, the scope of what you've been working with people on. Is it mostly brain-based neurotransmitter work, or is it immune system, or?
Boy, yeah. So what I found is I'm using particular protocols that are mineral-based.
Okay.
And so it's interesting. I feel like people are like, I don't feel grounded. Well, what's in the ground? Minerals. I think there's something to that.
It might be, yeah.
And so once we drive those minerals into the brain, they wake up. It's kind of like I think about my brother. He was definitely drowning. Okay, and when you're drowning, what do you feel like? You can't think.
Sure.
You can't focus. You don't care what your pants are. You're like, what's for dinner? Nothing. In fact, if you go long enough, you do what my brother did, and you're like, maybe I should end it. And that's what that lack of oxygen does. And I'm finding that minerals and nutrients in the brain are the same thing. It just happens a little bit longer.
Sure.
But I've also found that there's about 40 other things that I've been documenting over these last years. I'm like, oh, that person needed extra help with their gut, which is not a big thing that you think about. Yeah, it's a big deal for them.
Sure.
But someone else is like a mosquito bite, or it's allergies, or it's asthma, or it's a root canal, any kind of inflammatory problem. In fact, the medical profession several years ago were about to start giving anti-inflammatories for depression, and now they are. Well, why would they do that if it wasn't helpful?
Sure.
And so I'm finding that, I need to drive the nutrition into the brain, but we also got to get rid of the inflammation wherever it is.
Yeah, I too agree that the majority of our country's lifestyle-driven diseases and problems are absolutely related to inflammation cascade issues.
Yep.
And so peeling back that onion, although it be multimodal as far as approach, I think is at the root of a lot of the work that needs to be done to help people maximally.
For sure.
And get back to their peak performance, of course.
Yep.
But how prevalent would you say with the clients that you've worked with, especially being a nice cross from the country, different states, how prevalent would you say that you have found that mineral deficiency is at the root of their inflammation issue? Do you find more genetically predisposed folks to expressing extra inflammation? What do you find as far as the most common drivers of the deficiencies?
I don't know.
Hard to say.
It's so hard to say. I mean, I lived in the same home, ate the same food, same parents, same faith, same everything, and I didn't get depression, anxiety. My brother takes his life.
Sure.
So I don't know why I'm getting the nutrition that I need through garbage products. Like, you go to any store and you eat the tomatoes, they don't smell like a tomato. Right. They don't taste like a tomato. Well, I found out that the reason why that is they don't have the minerals in there. If you have minerals in that food, it tastes amazing. Absolutely. And that's why you have farm to table restaurants.
Yes.
The best of the best, and you're paying premium price for minerals.
And a huge proponent of home gardens, of course, and
right.
You want to taste the sunshine when you pluck it off the
exactly.
vine, so to speak. But I agree with that 100%.
Yeah,
and,
so
I think industry-wide, the soils have been depleted over decades now.
Yeah.
With the mass-produced foods, and absolutely, like you said, it is so palatable.
Right.
The difference. I mean, you can completely change or taste the difference in it. But,
it's not the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was going to kind of further answer your question.
Sure.
I don't do blood work. I have tons of friends that take the blood and do all that kind of stuff. I am such a simple person. I don't have to charge them thousands of dollars to help them get better because it's such a simple thing. You add oxygen back to the brain, you wake up, you're happy. And if you can add minerals and nutrients, I'm not saying everybody is totally done and cured, obviously. I'm not doing the cure word ever.
Yeah.
But they feel so much better that they're starting to go, I'm going to go work out again.
Yes.
You know what? I can go back to church. I'm going to stop dating that guy. Like there's all these stories, so story after story,
Sure,
where they're just like, where was I? And, it's not rocket science. What do we call it? Hangry?
Yeah.
Why do we call it hangry?
Yeah.
If it's not a real thing, why do we say that? Well, it is a real thing. If we don't have the minerals and nutrients, we don't have the oxygen in our brain, we don't have the microvascular supply and all the things that you and I do day in and day out with our clients, then they suffer, and then it just snowballs from there.
Yes. I was reading, I met the author of this book called Dopamine Nation,
and
how all of the modern technology and different things, we're constantly, our brain's been gearing now towards dopamine hits all the time, and serotonin, and we're seeing a lot of sleep issues, we're seeing a lot of mood issues, depressions, and all those things. And I was reading about the how you can solve a lot of that naturally with increasing your serotonin levels and your dopamine levels on a natural basis.
Right.
And I think that is also going to be another huge focus, and what nutrition
sure.
also drives. Even sunlight drives those things. Getting out and getting 20 minutes or better of sunlight is super important with regard to producing more serotonin in the brain and affecting your sleep cycles and all those things as well. So, so tell me a little bit about what you've seen with specifically brain fog and COVID and how you've addressed that.
Okay. Well, of those 40 things, virtually everybody that struggles with the protocols I'm doing are because of the inflammation.
Yes. Yeah, and I've seen also clinically, brain fog is a huge issue across the board in much of the clientele when it wasn't 3 years prior.
Yeah.
Same people, nothing else has changed except for they've either contracted COVID or done the vaccine route. So,
and how many people do you know that say, "Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm not feeling good today because I got my shots"? Clue.
Yeah.
And that increased inflammation is it's triggering them. So I have multiple clients that have come to me and they're all of a sudden feeling horrible and they're depressed and they have anxiety. And one of the questions I ask them is, have you been vaccinated recently? And it's shocking how often there's a correlation. I can't say it's 1-to-1. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things that have changed. Or they did get sick recently, or they haven't gotten over, because we're calling it long COVID now. We have these new diagnoses.
Yeah,
so
these long-running neuro symptoms and whatnot.
It's definitely a major part of what I ask and the questions. So one of those 40 things that I ask them if I haven't figured it out already. And one of the things I think I mentioned earlier when we were talking on the phone is the 3 white devils.
Yes.
So you have the white flour, the sugar, and sometimes dairy. Not everybody dairy, but a lot of people. And so, those 3 white devils are the first things I talk about. Yeah. And then I go down the road and definitely.
My daughter experienced that years ago, and I don't think she minds me telling this story, but she had this skin breakout where her skin was drying out, cracking, and very painful. And we ran through everything possible in the sun that was causing it. Nothing affected it. I did a big workup with her, and she went medical route as well. And the topical steroids and all that was what they tried, but nothing fixed this issue. She finally got tested for diet sensitivity, and 2 things popped up: dairy and gluten sensitivity.
Okay.
And when she eradicated those out of her diet, it immediately went away and never came back until she had a little bit of one or the other. And in the day, her skin started to
pops
respond.
up.
So, enough proof in the pudding there. So, but
Right.
it's things like that, I think, as the country is becoming more aware of, that these are options and things worth investigating because not only has the food supply changed over so many years, most of the time not for the better. So it's an important thing to check, and the effect can be far-reaching, not just how you feel immediately, but even a little bit over time of putting these fires out where the body and the brain can perform at a higher level. And like you said, as you're doing that, performing at the higher level, now you're ready to receive more intuition, more prayerful answers, and direct your life accordingly for the better. And
I love that.
That's part of the
It really is our gut feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, we already know, right? Like right now, you and I know what we should be doing.
Sure.
And if we just do that one little thing, everything would change. And yet we don't, and we don't, and we don't. And sometimes you just need that little bit of a push, a hug, see an old friend. Like, you're bringing back so many wonderful memories.
Are you saying you want a hug?
Yeah, I want a hug. After this, we'll get a hug. But you told me about a book. I don't know how you like it now, but I love it. It's called The Science of Getting Rich. You told me about that book years ago, and I never read it. Now I've read it over almost 100 times.
Oh, wow.
And it's just get richer and deeper and deeper. And so sometimes it's just that little thing, and we all know what we should be doing, but that's why we are doctors and we're educators more than anything, to just kind of bring us back to who we really are.
Yeah.
And that affinity that you talk about, and that peak performance comes from within, but sometimes you just need someone to just remind us.
I agree. That 1% deviation, and then instilling the
That's
discipline on that path of that 1% deviation, has a compounding effect down the road. And like you said a minute ago, it helps us to get back to our most authentic self and express what we're designed to be in our lifetime.
Who we really
at
are.
a higher level.
Absolutely.
And that's the key.
I agree.
Yeah. Not only in our individual life, but also our family life and our community life and
Everything.
Yeah, I agree. That's awesome. So one thing I was going to ask you about on the effect of this, not just the COVID effect and all that, but mental burnout, mental fog along that thought stream with regard to mental health. I know you have seen, and you work with many, many doctors across the country that also, being human, have gone through the COVID pandemic years and seen lots of changes and had a lot of different psychological demands and whatnot, go through or find themselves in either a depression for the first time sometimes in their life, or, and even more importantly, professional burnout.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that work you've been doing with those.
So I've been interviewing doctors all over the country through LinkedIn. So I've just been connecting, developing relationship, doing Zooms, and just kind of getting a feel of the pulse of what's going on and what's happening in their practices. And there's two women in particular that seem to be a good example of what I'm seeing virtually everywhere, even in England, as I've talked to someone recently there. And they were just, how do I put this lightly, disgusted. Absolutely, utterly, just their faith in kind of society, but medical in general.
The model of
what was going on in North Carolina specifically.
Okay.
Now, I don't know exactly what they were doing, but they're just like, I'm done. I can't participate in this anymore. I don't agree with what's going on, so I don't want to talk about details because I don't want to make any claims, but they were done. And so one of them left to Florida. The other one stayed there and is doing her own practice. But she was, she's just thriving now. Now her intake is like 90 minutes. Like, she's thoroughly listening to her patients. And people I think they're done with the 5-minute, I think this is what's going on. Take this, come back if you don't get better. And she's changing lives. She's a nurse practitioner, and she's not letting any stone to be unturned, kind of thing. And I applaud her. I think that's amazing, and that's kind of what I'm seeing. Not everybody. A lot of people love what they're doing. They love the clinic. They love the hospitals. And there's a study I saw recently where there's 80% of nurse practitioners are burned out. Yeah. And half of them want to leave now.
Mostly model driven, wouldn't you say, as far as the industry changes, the demands on the doctors change. And many aren't aware of this. As a client or a patient, they're not aware of the demands that have taken place over the last several years on medical healthcare providers. So much so that because of the way the model has shifted, the genuine souls that are in it to help people get burnt out, and then they're looking for, how can I get back to my authentic self as a doctor?
Yeah. Why did you start in the first
get back
place?
To help me. Exactly. As opposed to just checking boxes and that kind of thing. So
exactly.
Yeah. So you work with those docs and you help them in what way? How do you?
Most of them. Well, the ones I want to work with are the ones like what I did. I'm a virtual clinic now, so I don't have an office. I haven't been in office for over 12, 13 years now. And they want the freedom and the lifestyle that comes with that. So we help them put together protocols. Some of them, they already know exactly what they want to do, and I just coach them and help them with some of those pitfalls that they're going to find, that at least I found. And just guide them through it. And
the transition of it.
And maybe they're in the practice 2 or 3 days a week instead of every day, all week long, doing all the the stuff that they
Yes.
that they're burned out for. So
Yeah.
this kind of gives them a little bit of a, like they're still working, but it's kind of a vacation because like, oh, this is so much easier and more freeing. And you know, when you're having results with the mental issues, and that's what they want to do in the first place, it's very satisfying.
Yeah, there's several doctors I've been talking to over the last few years, and these are very reputable doctors, high positions at very reputable hospital groups that are leaving to do boutique medicine or virtual medicine, telemedicine.
Fantastic.
Because of those reasons, they can serve their patients at a higher level,
Right.
without having to play some of the games, so to speak, with.
Yeah, I mean,
models.
it seems like Dr. Google is giving us all the information, and then, you know, nurse insurance is telling you what you have to do.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a tough way to practice when you don't have control over anything that's going on.
Bad combination when the insurance companies play doctor. Bad combination.
I don't want to do that.
No. Good. I also wanted to ask you about kind of off subject a little bit, but
Okay.
tell me, we touched a minute ago about the earth and minerals, and what are your thoughts on grounding frequencies specifically? What are your thoughts on frequencies in general, both with what we experience in our human condition, if you will, but
Okay.
also how can we utilize some things that will give us a positive outcome, either an energetic boost, a healing provision, or what are your thoughts about frequencies in general?
Interesting. Do you have a follow-up question behind that?
I got
or-
a few.
Okay. Well, it's interesting you say that because I was just, as part of our trip, my son and I are on a cross-country trip. I'm meeting with several doctors, and there's a conference I'm going to in North Carolina where there's 300 occupational therapists. So we have a lot of dead time. From Utah to North Carolina is 30 hours of driving. Yeah. And so we were watching some stuff on pyramids. And they're talking about the energy of the pyramids, and you know the span and how it might focus all the energy to the top. And I was telling my son that I was learning karate back in the day, and how they have a technique where you stand there with your feet in the grass and you just rotate your core back and forth, and you're kind of whipping your arms, where you kind of touch your liver and slap your backside, and it's hard to describe, but basically you're pulling the energy.
Of sort?
A Macarena, yeah. Something like that. I visualize one of those sticks where you go like this, and it's a drum, and those things whip around, kind of like that.
Okay.
And it was interesting how healing that felt. Like you're drawing this chi or this energy or this life source from the grass or from the ground, and we know that the earth does have frequencies and it does have a resonance, and it just felt good to just kind
Schumann's
of
resonance.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know much more than that, other than it feels good, and I appreciate that. But I do know a lot of people have benefits from having those beds, and they just run those wires down and through the ground, and they ground themselves. I work from outside underneath the trees with the grass and my feet in the grass. That's where their doctor is. So I'm literally outside under huge trees, and I feel way better.
Very grounded doctor.
I am grounded.
Good
Yeah,
to hear.
exactly. So I don't know if I have to add more than that, unless you have another thought. But
Well, it's been something that's intriguing to me, because we know everything in our existence is energy at different frequencies and intelligently coordinated. The solid table here, all the way to our human flesh, to our mind, everything is just energetically bound. So I think it's pretty missed when we don't take a look at that with regard to how can we affect through frequencies, through energy, some systems.
I do have an example, and that has really fascinated me. So I used to have 2 tuning forks when I would teach, and one of them would be a C chord, and the other one would be a D chord. And so I just hit one and bring them close together, not touching, and then let them hear, and they'd hear nothing. Okay? And then I'd take another C chord, so I have 2 C chords, I'd hit it, bring them close without touching, and then it rang. Like, how does that happen? Well, that's just kind of the same thing when you're meeting someone for the first time. When you shake hands, you're like, you have 10 seconds, 30 seconds until you have a judgment about their entire existence, you know?
Yeah.
And it's a big deal. It's a real thing. And I, going back to what I do on a daily basis, we are being destroyed in so many different ways. I was sharing with you earlier about the demineralization of our world.
Yes,
and
I want to get into this D plan of
that,
Satan that you have. I love it.
We'll talk about that in a second. But those minerals, like when those minerals are finally broken down from big rocks down to just the finite little things you can't even see, when that rootlet goes down and touches it, it has to be electrically charged to pull that mineral into the plant and become a tomato. And that's just not happening. And so even at the mineral level, we don't have the energy that we need. And we get it from people. We get it from, I believe, from God as well. And we get it from, the things that we read. And we're attracted. We become attractive. So there's a quote from Emerson. You're mentioning I love Emerson. Ralph Waldo Emerson. It's funny. I can't read a novel to save my life, but I love the deep words of Emerson that I have no clue what he's saying. But one of them, he says, "He who has more obedience than I masters me. Though he lift not his finger, around him I must gravitate with the rotation of spirits."
Ooh,
so if you have more mastery than I do, then I'm going to gravitate towards you.
Sure.
Just like you put a bowling ball.
It's the affinity principle.
Exactly. You
Yeah.
put a bowling ball on a trampoline, and you put marbles. They're going to eventually rotate into that area, and so you become more dense, not in a bad way, but you become denser.
Yeah.
Then and if someone walks in the room and you and I both enjoy football, we're gonna oh my, and everybody just gravitates to that person, even though they don't lift their finger.
Sure.
Around them, we must gravitate, and so I feel like for us to live our richest, most affinity life is to become who we really are, and not have the mask, and just take the mask off. Be who you are, authentically.
For sure. Yeah.
And just watch what happens. You're going to reject people accidentally, and then you're going to gravitate towards those. And I don't know. That's something I think about all the time. If I have more mastery, then I will attract those other people that help me become more masterful.
Yes. Yes, that's right, because it's heading to the same resonant frequency, so to speak. Yeah. Yeah, excellent. It's so, with this, Emily came across some information that I was like, oh, I learned about that a while ago, and so let's do it. But basically what it was Tesla-born understanding of how to tap energy from the ether, literally, pull it down into our garden, and if I didn't watch it happen over a few days, I would not have believed it. Even though I knew the science, if I didn't see it happen, I thought, oh, what a quirky thing to do. But it's basically taking a wood stake, and you may have seen this, electroculture, it's out there. You take a wood stake, you wrap a copper coil around it that goes up, and you can go dendritic or different planes coming out there off the end. But it's wrapped around this wooden stake, and then you plant that, and you sink that into the base of your garden, the soil, and you can do it a couple different places. And it may have 4 foot by 8. You might have 2 or 3 stakes in there.
That's awesome.
And nothing else changed. There was no extra rain. There was no extra Miracle-Gro, anything like that. And we were left for 3 days. I came back, and not only was the foliage huge and lush, but the fruiting was already happening, and beautiful fruiting, and just the tomatoes are. Anyways,
that's
if
fantastic.
I didn't see it make that change in 3 days, and we've gardened several years, I've never seen that happen before. And the only difference was the electro gardening.
Well, I'm a fan of Back to Eden gardening, if you've heard of that. It's called backtoedenfilm.com. I've watched it so many times. I'm kind of embarrassed to say how many times, but I'm kind of nerdy that way. Yeah, the biggest idea is you're putting wood chips on top and just let the earth go. That's it. And what's in those wood chips? Lots of minerals, lots of nutrients, and copper and other minerals. And so you can take a hard ground and just put the wood chips on and just watch the magic happen. And within a year or two, you've just got lush soil, and right next to it, you've got concrete as soil. So that makes total sense to me. Even though I haven't used copper specifically, I've used wood chips, and I've seen the miracle happen.
Add some copper to it.
I'm going to do that.
You're rocking and rolling.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah, awesome. So I want to come back to this because I love the overall thing that you've been putting together called the D plan, D-E, D plan of Satan. Let's take me through some of the big ones on the list, and I think we could drill down on a few of those as we go.
I don't have them all memorized, so maybe I should have brought my cheat sheet. But one day I was thinking, Satan's, I'm God-fearing and God-believing, and I just think his favorite tool is the one that works. He doesn't care. Like, he has so many different ways to get to us.
Sure.
And I thought, okay, well, there's got to be different options. And I just realized he is doing, and I noticed that DE was in front of many of them. So we are defeminizing our country. We're demasculating our country. We're dividing our country. We're demineralizing our country. Divorce, it's not quite DE, but there's divorcing of faith, and there's divorcing of marriages, of course, divorcing of friendships. I'm trying to think of all the other ones. I think there's like 10 or 15 of them, and they just go on and on and on and on. And I think that's very unfortunate. And I just thought it was dividing. I don't know if I said that already, but yeah. It's just many different D words that keep popping up into my mind. And once I hear a new one, I just write it down.
Yeah, those are all things that have not only an immediate effect on families and communities, but ultimately country.
Oh, depopulate.
Yeah.
Or
that's a very current
deperson.
one.
Deperson or
Depersonalize?
deplatform. There's some more. Like, I mean, if you say something wrong, like today, if I was famous, I said something stupid.
Like the cancel society.
Or how about 20 years from now, I said something stupid today that they don't agree with 20 years from now, you're canceled. You're deplatformed, you're depersoned, you don't exist anymore. And that's wrong.
That is wrong. Yeah. All those D's have deep conversations behind each one of
For
those.
sure.
I'd love for you to publish those for folks
I'll have
to have.
to.
Yeah, that would be a good thing. The going back to what's your observation of, and I've also observed this in the last at least decade, maybe more so in the last 5 years, this narrative that is existing and being pushed forward with defeminizing and demasculization across the country. What have you seen with that?
Yeah.
What do you notice? What are your observations?
I've noticed, so not to get too personal, so I'll keep it kind of general, but I've noticed that there's a trend in some people that I'm around that the more masculine the woman, the less masculine the men, and they become indistinguishable. And there's a very popular book that a lot of women hate until they read it, and read it, and they start liking it again. And it's called The Fascinating Woman. And it is all about becoming very feminine, which at the same time helps the man become masculine. It's a fascinating play on words, fascinating book. And so I haven't been allowed to read it, because if I read it, she's like, then she's going to have to, I'm going to be expecting her to do something different. So for the sake of our marriage, she's really working on how to be the very best woman she can be, supportive and loving and all those kind of things. Again, not getting into details. But I thought it was also interesting. There was a study done, and I can't point to it. I just remember it, where when there wasn't a man in the home, the girls were less feminine and the boys were less masculine. They lost their identity.
And a higher chance of going to prison later.
Everything was wrong. Not that the woman obviously can't do amazing things, and there's so many examples of rock solid kids because of a single parent, especially mom. But it was interesting that they just weren't.
Trying to wear both hats the whole time.
They weren't themselves. Amazing that a dad can help a girl become her very best self, and also help a boy become his very best self, even if they're totally messed up, dad. But it's a fascinating topic, and I've realized the more. So one day I came home and I was building my home in Utah. Okay, so I built everything. I did everything except for dig it. I didn't do drywall because other people are better at drywall, and I didn't do my concrete. I literally I built my own cabinets. I did everything in this house. I came home one night, started making my own dinner, and she was upset at me. And I'm like, what's wrong? And it wasn't until the next day she's like, you don't need me. You're literally building our house and cooking your own food. And she didn't feel needed. How many moms all of a sudden feel not needed when their kids leave the house and they're empty nesters?
Sure,
they don't feel needed anymore. They've been needed from womb to breastfeeding
24/7.
And then all of a sudden you're not needed anymore. And so there's something very feminine about being needed. And I did need her, but she didn't feel that way. And so it's like, I can't cook my own meal, which again, I'm not a cook my meal and give me my drink, kind of guy. because I want to be helpful, but
Sure.
there's some things I should not be helpful in, so that we can have that relationship. It's interesting.
Yeah. I would say, in general, and this is just a general statement, in general, women have the gift, the feminine gift of nurturing,
Yeah.
and like you said, being needed. And I think for men, oftentimes they crave respect and validation and appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all men and women both also crave some of those as well. But I think there's stronger evidence that those are stronger tendencies or natural inclinations, male to female. But see, this is the beauty of nature to me. The
yin and
polar
yang.
the yin and yang, the polar opposite, the way things are designed in all of nature is to have polarities.
For sure.
And in human nature is to have these polarities, but when they're synced up and on page and resonating with each other, it's collaborative, it's synergistic, it's supportive, and it's amplifying. And that is what nature supports and all of science supports. And when you deviate from the grand design, if you will, when we deviate in our human thinking, you get the results of that. And it's the opposite of those
I was trying to think of any example in history where a society went against that and thrived.
Yeah.
And for some reason, Napoleon popped in my mind.
I think there's like zero.
No,
over time.
Napoleon was amazing at a lot of things, but not building strong culture.
Yeah.
In the end, he was very promiscuous, and he ended up becoming. I'm trying not to offend people that are going to watch, but he was not living according to nature, as we're talking about, and it was destructive. It was destroyed, and nothing good came of that. And so I'm thinking, okay, is there any other examples? There's not.
Yeah, all of the Rome story. All of those that study history see these cycles and patterns and observations that are undeniable, but yet we keep our blinders on sometimes in modern day because we're so happy in our comfort zone. And as long as we stay in our comfort zone and our self-justification zone, one, we don't have to change. We can spend less energy, but path of least resistance kind of thing, which is part of human nature in general. But we don't have to be as accountable, and we don't have to do the hard things. And the result of that over time is always the same. It's a negative response. It's a negative outcome to varying degrees.
Yeah.
And so to live fully awake, if you will, and aware, and then willing to put in, like some of the distance runners and athletes talk about embracing the suck. It sucks. It hurts. But if you'll learn to embrace it and accept the pain of it, and employ the discipline of it, then you'll get the positive results.
That's right.
And I think that follows true in all categories in life. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, read The Fourth Turning. That's a very popular book. Bill Clinton read that book. All of the presidents in the last 25 years have read that book. And have you read it by chance?
What was the name of that again?
The Fourth Turning.
No, I haven't read that.
Okay, so William Strauss, I think, is his name. He just wrote the follow-up. But anyways, 25 years ago, they wrote this book, and they predicted what was going to happen in the next 25 years, and all of them happened. Wow. And they call it like prophetic future of the economy prophecy or something like that. But they're not prophetic at all. They're not religious of any kind. It's all just the cycles in history, the four different turnings that happen over and over, 20 to 30 years at a time. And after they all go, it's about 80 to 100 years. You have this full cycle. And they said going into 2001, something blah, blah, blah is going to happen. And we know what happened in 9/11, 2001. And then after that, around 2006 or 7 or something like that, we're going to have another problem. And of course, we have the economic crash. And they're predicting even through this year and next year and the following year. So, yeah, definitely one to pick up. It's not a page turner at all. It's very boring. But all of the presidents since Bill Clinton have been reading that and following it, and it's a profound book. Tony Robbins has interviewed him multiple times. But if you want to know what's coming and what's going on, and in there it talks about families, going back to that topic, during the first turning, they're tight because they just came through this horrible catastrophe,
sure.
World Wars.
Sure.
And then families start to separate. Where are we at today?
Yeah.
Totally separated. Masculinity and femininity starts out totally separate, and then they start becoming confused. and you don't know the difference between masculine and feminine. Where are we at in that?
Yeah.
We are so ripe for a big turn.
Absolutely.
And it's been prophesied, but it's also been just math.
It's a cycle of
it's just a cycle of our American history.
And I think Garrett White of Wake Up Warrior and Sean Whalen of Lions Not Sheep also have talked about some of these cycles that we've gone through as a country. Starting with industrial age, where we started as a tight family on the farm, a lot of interaction with your kids, a lot of interaction with your wife.
For sure.
And then they sell us on this idea of going to the city, making more money. Well, look at the nice things we can buy for the family, but now I'm disconnected from my kids and from my wife for more hours.
Right.
Wife is having to play the dad role and the mom role more now. So, and then, taking that through modern times where now both male and female are working, mom and dad are both working, so even less time with the children. And now the school systems and all of the government systems are influencing their life and raising and their ideologies, and they're more and more so.
Yeah.
So we know each other less. We're getting taught value systems differently than what we would have as a family, and we're being forced to learn these value systems.
Don't go down that road.
Yeah, I know, it's a long road there. So anyways,
we home educate for many reasons.
Yes. So, but these cycles that have brought us up to modern day, and we wonder why men are highly frustrated, feel lost oftentimes because, one, they didn't know, either weren't raised to know what it means to be a man and what it means to be a good father and what it means to be
Where's the
a
examples?
business leader with integrity.
Right.
We didn't learn these things, right? And so a lot of men are feeling that frustration. So those organizations, Wake Up Warrior and Lions Not Sheep, their goal is to, one, help men reconnect with their higher power, number one. And number two, reconnect with their spouse and their children, their family. And then number three, bring that integrity and those connections and that greater understanding and that greater ability to perform in those levels into their business and their workings in the community.
Yeah.
And that is what it's going to take, and why I support those two organizations in directions, is it's going to take grassroots effort and learning and striving to build the family stronger, healthier communities on out, to raise the level of the country and let the country express its full potential.
Yeah.
Because it's a young country, right? We have a young country compared to world history.
Right.
But the potential, the uniqueness of the design of our country is beautiful. As much as they keep trying to tarnish and change the Constitution, it is a beautifully designed by divinely led groups of educated people. And there's some amendments that have taken place that needed to, and I would agree with that.
Sure.
But it's so unique to the world history that if we can just strengthen our families, communities on back up, the expression of what America can be in the world is beautiful and strong. And I believe in it. I think we can do that.
I agree.
I pray that we can do that.
I hope so.
Yeah. Anyhow, there's a bit of a tangent, but
no, it's beautiful. No, that's why one of the reasons why we home educate is so our kids are reading the classics, and they know our history. They know not only our state history, but then the country's history and other countries' history, because it if it doesn't totally repeat, it rhymes when it comes to future challenges and things like that. But if we don't implant those things, it's gone. And I know this is silly, but I'm noticing the changing of the flags in our states. They're totally taking away the history of, like Utah specifically. They took away all of the history, everything that made Utah, and it's just this NFL looking
new logo.
Yeah, logo. and I know, again, this is silly, but the best looking license plates right now are the black ones. They're beautiful. Taking away all the history. Not even I love Tennessee because it's the volunteer state. And that's how I felt when I lived here. So many people volunteering, and that's gone off the license plate too, because you have this beautiful black, minimalistic, and I think it's little, but bad things happen in little ways. Subtle changes. And again, I don't think there's something nefarious about it, but I want that black license plate for but that's what we're doing. We're losing our history, losing just the foundations, and it was predicted from
uniqueness.
One of our I'm not going to say who, but one of the presidential candidates with his wife came out and said, we're going to lose our history. We need to lose our foundation, our families. We're going to change everything fundamentally, and they are. Mm-hmm. It's changing fundamentally.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Speaking of, and this has been tracking this over certainly 20 years, probably even a little longer than that. But what are your thoughts on the current status of the food supply in our country?
Oh, wow.
Big question, I know.
Yeah. Well, I think it's unfortunate that some farmers, if their land starts growing the wrong stuff, they get sued, and then they lose everything because of the control. I think it's interesting when I turn on the channel on Saturday morning, the local news is talking about gardening, and I love gardening, but it is. If I didn't know if they weren't using particular words like pesticides and herbicides and all that kind of stuff, and they were using medical terminology, I wouldn't know the difference. Like, we are losing all control over our bodies, and now we're losing all control of our backyard gardens.
Yeah.
Because it's a scientific everything, and yet that's why I go back to that back to Eden, like the Garden of Eden, where most things can be solved by just basic transitions. So yeah, this food supply in general, I mean, there's not local anything anymore. It's big conglomerates, which I understand. I mean, you want to feed everybody, and yet if you had dense food with mineral nutrient dense food, you're full.
Feeding.
You're full with one apple. If you ate a real good solid apple, you're full.
Yeah. Once your body adjusts to eating real food.
You ate 8 of them, or 5, 3 or 4 of them, and then you have cottage cheese on top of that, and you have all this kind of stuff, and you're still not full. There's a reason why we're not full, because
then they put the chemicals in there so you crave more of the
salt and the sugar combination.
There's a certain company that
we have a friend that we were running with, and he goes, you know how we make that happen, you get addicted, is because you add the sugar and the salty and the savory, and you can't get enough of it.
That's right.
Like, that makes sense.
Yeah, there was a company, which will go unnamed, but they had a think tank on how to increase their sales, and so they realized it cost X number of dollars to acquire new patrons of their food product. And then they realized chemically they can use the same product but add chemicals that makes you crave more of it. So they didn't have to spend money to generate new clients, so to speak. They just doubled the consumption.
Nice.
Because of the chemical tricks.
Jeez.
So that's
awesome.
That happened a couple decades ago, and I'm seeing more and more of that in the food products. There's some evil science.
Well, it's interesting. The original website I wish I would have kept this bottle, but on Dasani's water bottle that I guess they took, it was several years to just perfect it. So they opened it and it had a psh, and all, just everything about it, the design, the bottling, everything. On the back, it said makeyourmouthwater.com. And then they changed it because that's exactly what they were trying to do. They were putting just enough of sodium in there to make your mouth water and want more and more and more of it. And so I don't know what it is now. Maybe it's the same, maybe it's not. I don't know. But I thought that was interesting that they had that website. They changed it, and now you can't find it.
Yeah. People must have figured it out.
That's great. It's perfect. Perfectly bad.
Yeah. But so many things they talk about in the grocery stores, try to stay out of the middle aisles, right? And it has to do with how many preservatives and additives, and all those are triggers for things like ADD, ADHD, and all these mentally driven conditions have been shown to be aggravated by these preservatives and artificial additives, basically. Let alone the source of what the food actually is or supposed to be.
Right.
Yeah, I get the consumerism and I understand making a buck, but I go back to a statement I made before. We live in this country that can provide so much, have all these opportunities and freedoms, but yet the things we allow to continue in our country with regard to food supply, with regard to healthcare, we rank so low, we're so unhealthy as a country, both cognitively, emotionally, spiritually, and physically. You have to stop and go, do we care about our people?
Yeah.
Because the evidence suggests otherwise, and especially comparing it to Europe or different areas where they don't allow these things in the food supply. They don't allow some of these practices to happen in healthcare. It's not allowed. So
yeah,
It's just a wake-up question I have. It's something that really irritates me, really bothers me, because all the evidence suggests that it's a bunch of song and dance and pony show a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be.
I agree. That's for sure.
So, anyways. Well, is there anything that you can think of that you'd like to add to, for as far as a take-home nugget for families to be aware of, to maybe implement, some little subtle changes in their home and their lifestyle that will benefit them? Yeah. And then we'll.
Okay. Well, so when it comes to feeling their best, when it comes to focus, concentration, memory, anything that just feels cognitive, the emotions of it, the stresses and feeling overwhelmed, snappy, edgy, that kind of stuff. I would follow your gut feeling, maybe follow that first, because maybe you do just need to get out and get some more sunlight. Maybe you do need to walk around and get in the, put your feet in the, what's the last time people put their feet in the grass?
Yeah. Yeah, earthing is rare anymore.
We go from cubicle to our car to our house. Don't just open the garage and maybe not even mow the lawn for a week. We're just not outside at all, unfortunately. So just following gut feeling, but also where is your inflammation? That's a big deal, because if they're going to use medications to help, take down inflammation, to anti-inflammatories for depression, anxiety, then why not get rid of that inflammation on your own as best as you can? I like the 3 white devils, white flour, sugar.
Source of it too, right?
Yeah, get to the source if you can. If you have allergies, then do all that you can to knock that out. If it's medication, that might even be the best thing for them. But whatever they can do to do that. Yeah.
The 3 white devils are excellent.
3 white devils.
Yeah.
100% of my clients could not sleep before we talked. Go to sleep, stay asleep, wake up refreshed. None of them. Thousands of them. In fact, I don't even ask them anymore. I just go, and now you're going to start sleeping better. Like, how did you know I couldn't sleep? Because everybody with anxiety and stress and all this kind of stuff cannot sleep. They have no energy during the day, and they can't sleep at night. That's messed up. That is not right. So we're doing the energy drinks, and then we're doing the medications to fall asleep. So we gotta reverse that. And so part of that's going to be getting rid of the inflammation and just and I'm not saying do everything different. That's one of the reasons I don't do nutrition, because if I gave them a package, they paid me thousands of dollars, they're not going to do it. Yeah. It's hard. Yeah. So find out what that 80-20 problem is. 80% of our problems are coming from 20% of what we're doing. Yeah, yeah. So if it's that bowl of ice cream every night, get rid of the bowl of ice cream. Yeah. There's something in our lives that we're doing on a daily basis that we know we shouldn't be doing. Yeah. Cut that one thing out and just it's called, a consistency chain. Decide now. Decide is an interesting word. It's pesticide, herbicide, suicide. It is a decision that kills off all other options. Yes, yes. So kill off all the other options. Start linking that chain. One of the things I did recently is I'm just going to sweat every day. I'm sweating every day. And so I do not go without sweating every day, and I don't break that chain. And eventually it turned into, maybe I should lift some more weights. Yeah. Maybe I should do some push-ups. Maybe I should learn more about, how to build muscle and that kind of stuff. I've never had definition. I'll never be as big as you, but I've never had this much definition. I don't know if I want to.
It'll start with the hug that you've been waiting.
Okay, there we go. So but it just started with me sweating. Yeah. So again, what is that one thing? Yes. I love that book, The One Thing. But what is that one thing? Don't break the chain. And it's just amazing what will happen down the road.
Yeah, and we didn't even talk about, when you brought up the sleep issue, we didn't even go down that whole. Maybe we'll have to do another podcast in the near future on some specific subjects and just stay on the subject. So we didn't even bring up the influence of our interfacing with technology and how that affects our sleep cycles. Yeah. And even it's showing in the younger generations that growing up with this much technological interface, shorter attention spans. I think the latest study was adult, not even children. Adult attention span is 8 seconds. Gosh. A goldfish is 9 seconds. Figure that,
That's
right?
horrible.
And that was an adult study. So we have this issue plus the light, the alpha wave that comes off electronics, and the blue light, and all these things that interrupt our brain patterns and brain regulation, which we'll get into when we talk about brain core systems.
Awesome.
But that'll be a good subject too. But the technological interface, how it changes our brain wiring, literally, and how we process information. but we can do a whole nother one on that.
We definitely can do that.
Well, thank you, Dr. Brady, for
my
coming,
pleasure.
for
Thank
coming
you.
all this way and carving out the time for us to do a podcast, and look forward to doing another one with you on some more subjects.
Sounds good.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thank you all.